Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your surreal Gerald Quinn, discussing the world of sports and pop culture. NFL Week 10 is in the books. I will be, of course, hosting solo tonight. We will get back, Mr. Sat, very soon. I'm sure he would have a lot to talk about, and I'm sure part of him doesn't will no he wouldn't he's not gonna hide from anything. He's not hiding right now, but he would want to get a lot off his chest. Was able to communicate with them. He's not happy right now, to say the least. He is very down on his Buffalo Bills. The Bills Mafia is not in a good place right now. That's all there is to it, but we'll get to that certainly very soon in this podcast. We are in the stretch run of the season. Like the season is is everything. Everything's on the table right now. We're getting close to Thanksgiving. Um, we know everybody passed, of course, the trade deadline. At this point, you are what you are, and it's just a matter of staying healthy, and it's just a matter of what teams are going to, you know, it's a matter of physicality. As the weather turns, you saw this week a lot of running of the football. There were a number of teams, all just about all the winning teams ran the football at a very high clip. Had a number of teams running, had over 40 carries. So, can you run the football? Will go a long way into determining how far a lot of whether or not some of these teams are going to make the playoffs, or whether or not how far the teams that do make the playoffs, how far they're going to go. You have to be able to run the football in November and December and into January. Themes of this week, I felt the theme of this week. There's no team commanding the NFL right now. Of course, the Philadelphia Eagles fell to the Commanders, even though I still hate that name. Um, they were the last unbeaten team, and right now in the league, yeah, you could say Kansas City or Philadelphia is topping the power rankings. I know there's a number of power rankings that come out every week, but the bottom line is, a month ago it was Buffalo and Kansas City clearly heads and shoulders above everybody else, even Philadelphia. But now, I'm telling you right now, if I have a franchise quarterback and my team is relatively healthy going and we're in the playoffs, I like my chances. Like if I'm Tampa Bay, I like my chances. I'm sorry, I like especially with that defense and Tom Brady, playing up for Tom Brady standing upright. Like I don't fear any team if I have a franchise quarterback. The LA Chargers get if they get healthy. So there are a few teams out there that if they make the playoffs, they're not going to fear any of these top teams. Period. And that's where the league is at right now. You've had a record-setting amount of close games this year. So the league, from that standpoint, is telling you something that there is a ton of parity, and a lot of these teams are very much evenly matched. All the thoughts, the Buffalo segment, and certainly there were a number of thoughts with this particular game. First of all, let's get this out the way. This was not the game of the year. That's number one. I mean, we live such in a reactionary, just just overreactionary to the moment society. Is unbelievable. Like, my goodness, did you not watch the Kansas City Buffalo game earlier this season? And those two teams, when they were at the peak of their powers, and how that high level game. I mean, like that, it's not even close to being to that level of game. Minnesota is very good. Minnesota is not, Minnesota's not a Super Bowl team. So this was not the game of the year. Exciting game though, fun game to watch. A lot of plays that were made. Buffalo falls 33-30 in overtime. They dropped to 6-3 on the season, while the Vikings continue to just completely run away with the NFC North and put themselves in a position where they could possibly be a number one seed, even though they're still trailing Philadelphia by virtue of the fact that Philadelphia beat them in terms of the tiebreaker. The Vikings are in a good place right now at 8-1. This was a game that Buffalo absolutely had no business losing. You're up 27-10. You are in total control of the game. The 27-10 interception changed the entire complexion of this game. It really did. Um, that was the big one. Now, that was the first of the two Patrick Peterson interceptions. Um, well, maybe it was 27. I think it might have been even 27 17. Regardless, you go up, if you score on that possession, 30 to 17, I think the game is over. Definitely, 34-17, the game is over. You throw an interception, they come back down the field and get a touchdown. Next thing you know, you're in the dogfight. You're next thing you know, you are fighting for your lives at 27-20, at 27 23. They missed the extra point. Minnesota missed the extra point. That was the big one. And you look at Buffalo right now, and I'll get to Minnesota. They have not played well since the second half of since the first half of the Green Bay game about 3 weeks ago, right? So they played great, have a great first half against Green Bay. They score only 3 points in the second half. They have a disastrous game against the Jets. They've blown 2 back-to-back games where they've blown double-digit leads. They were up 14-3 against the Jets, couldn't hold that. They're up 27-10 against the Vikings. They're up 27-17 against the Vikings, couldn't hold that lead. So in the last 3 halves, right? In the last 3 second halves of their games, Buffalo has a grand total of 12 points. 12 points by this high-powered offense led by what coming into this game and for the most of the season has been the leading candidate for MVP in terms of Josh Allen. That is not the case anymore. We know all the receivers they have. So questions have to be answered in terms of what has happened to the Buffalo offense. And I don't know, I don't know the exact answer. I mean, you can say, well, Josh Allen hasn't played well. Duh. He has 10 interceptions, which leads the league. But why hasn't Josh Allen played well? Like what's going on? Again, I don't want to hear about on Sunday about the UCL injury. The first half he was spectacular. He threw the ball all over the place in the first half when they put up 24 points. Like he threw the ball all over the place. So I don't want to hear I don't want to hear about the first half. He was great in the first half. 4 interceptions in the last 4 red zone interceptions in the last 2 games. They've been bad in the red zone all season long. Allen has some just bad reads in this game. Both interceptions, especially the last interception, was I like the last interception. Just I don't know what he saw with that particular throw, but he's had some bad reads. He's made some bad reads, and again, it goes to what you start thinking about. And thought about something Sapp said earlier in the season about knocking the team when they did not have consistently run the football. And he doesn't even count the Josh Allen rushing yards. Doesn't even count those. But having a consistently thorough running game, and it seems like that has affected them over these last couple of games. Now, their rushing stats are going to look gaudy in this game, but again, 84 of those yards. Josh Allen had, I think, like 84 yards rushing in this game. So you have to kind of negate those yards, not take away those yards, but it's not the same. Having your quarterback running is just not the same as lining up, and knocking somebody off the ball. It's just not the same type of physicality. Then you hear about, maybe they should run Allen more in the red zone. Well, I mean, I've seen him run a lot in the red zone. It's not like they just He stops running when he gets to the red zone. So I don't think that's the problem. But something's amiss with that offense right now. It really is just is. I People want to talk about the offensive line. I don't think the offensive line has like been bad. I think the offensive line is pretty good. Like think about it, they came in and even in this game they had close to 500 yards of offense. Like they've been the number one like offense for a lot of this season, or top three for most of this season. I gotta give the defense a kind of a pass because it's really their first bad performance. Your defense is going to give up unless you're the 2000 Ravens. Even the 85 Bears had the bad game against the Miami Dolphins on that Monday night, which was their only loss in that Super Bowl, that 18-1 season. Your defense is going to have one game where they just don't have it. And the secondary, of course, we know how banged up that secondary is. And Minnesota and Justin Jefferson, who's just a spectacular player, may be pound for pound the best receiver in football, took advantage of that, full advantage of it. So again, I look at Buffalo. I think that I like this is it. This is as concerned um, as I've been of them in a long for I think all season. Like I really like this at this I didn't overreact to them I didn't overreact to the Miami loss. I thought divisional game at Miami. We know what Miami has done up. We know look at Miami right now. They're 7-3. So they could be a team that could maybe make a Super Bowl run. Who knows? Didn't overreact to that game. The Jet game, you know, that was one where it was like, okay, we might have something. But again, Jets, very good team, very good defense, divisional game on the road. This one, I think you have to, fire the alarm. I think you have to sound the alarm because this was a game that a Super Bowl winning team, a team with Super Bowl aspirations, does not lose at home. You're on a mission. You are trying to get back to the AFC Championship. You're on this. You are on. You're supposed to be. Have the eye of the tiger. This is a game, and coming off a loss at that against the Jets. This is normally where the Bills would bounce back and stop a mud hole in the Vikings, which they should have. So this is clearly an alarming loss. Now again, you know, and I can tell you what Rob Sapp said or text me. He basically said that they look like they're a dumb football team right now, and they look like fuck Josh Allen. He did say that in verbatim, fuck Josh Allen, and he did say they look like a first round exit. That's what he said. A wild card, first round wild card exit right now. Um, I don't know what's happening at halftime with the lack of adjustments as far as offensively. Again, we praised them at the beginning of the year, myself and Rob Sapp, about the adjustments that they would make and basically shut other teams out. Like they shut the Rams out, they shut the Titans out, they shut somebody else out too that didn't score. I don't. It might have been Pittsburgh, maybe it wasn't Pittsburgh. It might have been Pittsburgh, but there were three teams that they shut out in the second half, and we were praising them in terms of the matter of fact, even the adjustments they made against Kansas City over the course of the game. That has gone in that's in reverse. That has gone the opposite direction. Like they've been flat out coached in the second halves of these games in the last couple of weeks. Period. By teams that are not as talented as them. Jets, we know the Jets aren't nearly as talented as them, despite what they've done, what they have defensively, and even Minnesota's not as talented as they are. So I think that again, you don't panic. Here's the thing about the NFL, people. Uh, every season has 4 to 5 twists and turns. I don't care who you are. you're going to, at some point, whether it's through injuries, poor play, you are going to have to deal, every team is going to have to deal with a crisis situation, a football crisis situation. That's just the nature of the NFL. Like, that's just, it is what it is. Philadelphia could be going through it, you know, coming off the loss against Washington. This could be the beginning of theirs. I mean, who knows? They could have a 2 3 game losing streak coming up. I mean, that's just the NFL right now. So every team deals with it. Kansas City dealt with it last year, and we thought they were coming. And they ended up making the AFC championship. So I don't care who you are, unless you're this all-time great juggernaut team, we know they're not. There are zero teams like that on that level right now in the NFL. You're going to go through a stretch of games where you're not playing well. Even if you're winning, you're not playing well. So we'll see. They have veteran coaches. They're a team that's been to an AFC championship. They've been in the playoffs the last 3 or 4 years. We'll see what they're made of. Are these fixable? Yes. They're going to start getting some people back in their secondary? Yes. Do they still have pound for pound the most talent in the league? Yes. But, this ideal that they were going to just run all over the league, run roughshod through even the AFC, that's not going to happen. And they have completely just thrown away that Kansas City win. That Kansas City win, basically, I'm not gonna say it doesn't mean anything because they still will hold the tiebreaker against Kansas City. But right now, you look at the standings. Kansas City is a game ahead of Buffalo. Okay, Kansas City's 7-2. They are a game ahead of Buffalo. Buffalo will be in a dogfight, right? A dogfight to win, just to get to the playoffs and to win to win their division. They'll make the playoffs, but they're gonna be in they basically trail Miami by like a game and a half. Remember, Miami beat them the first time. Miami right now 7-3. The Jets are right there. Okay. And Jets have beaten them. So they have their work cut out for them. If they are the team that Rob Sapp thought they could be, then you know what? You take your lumps, you brush this aside, and you go out there for the rest of the season and handle your business. Like there's no, everything is still in front of them, still right there for them. So, we'll see what they're made of. As far as Minnesota, listen, Minnesota, a lot, wanted to play, kind of wanted to had a chip on their shoulder. We don't get any respect. I give Minnesota a lot of credit. They got some help from Buffalo, but they went out there on the road. Kirk Cousins was not playing great by any stretch of imagination. Justin Jefferson was making him look like a Hall of Famer with some of the catches that he was making. But they got down double digits on the road, fought back, made plays, and stole the game. That's all there is to it. Like I give them all credit in the world. I don't think Minnesota is a Super Bowl team. Now, could Minnesota make a conference championship? Sure. Because especially if they get home field advantage, all they have to do is win one playoff game to accomplish that. Do I think Minnesota again is one of the 3 or 4 teams that can win a Super Bowl? Absolutely not. And there will be a number of teams that I will like going into the playoffs outside of Minnesota if they do make the playoffs. Like I would San Francisco, the Chargers, teams like that, Tampa Bay. Like Minnesota, I just don't think that it is. I think that they're overachieving. I don't trust Kirk Cousins in the big spot. I think that a good defense can somewhat negate. We saw the Eagles do it earlier this season, can negate Justin Jefferson with the right game plan. Buffalo just didn't had no secondary. Like they had nothing in the secondary. And even with that said, I can make a case that literally all Kirk Cousins was just targeting one guy. Like like you knew what Kirk Cousins was going with the football in literally like almost down the stretch of that game in the fourth quarter overtime of that game. Period. Like it's just he throwing the coverage. He was going to Jefferson, sink or swim. So I'm not sold on Minnesota. They deserve respect as far as they're going to win that division. They could end up with home field advantage, but they're not a team that I think could get to or let alone win a Super Bowl. As far as the game of the week, this actually probably I can make a case was a better game. Green Bay saves its season with a just a must-win game victory over the Dallas Cowboys. They improved to 4-6. They have another home game tomorrow against the Titans. We'll see if they can kind of like make one of these runs down the stretch. They listen in the NFC. They're not out of it in the NFC because the NFC there's gonna be a team that's 500 that probably makes the playoffs with that last wild card spot. So they are still in it. They without question had their best performance of the season, especially offensively. Rodgers with the 3 touchdowns. The game plan was perfect from an offensive standpoint. Green Bay ran the ball 39 times with only 20 passes. They ran down Dallas's throat, 207 yards rushing. Big day for Aaron Jones. You see the rookie Christian Watson with the 3 touchdown pass catches. Even with that said, this was a game that Dallas was not supposed to lose. This is why you can't trust Dallas ever, because they're gonna find a way to just do something. They can't get out their own way. They were up in that game. You know, you are up 20, you're up by 14 points in the second half, right? So Dallas was was either up or that game was relatively close throughout. Okay. Matter of fact, Dallas had the biggest lead at 28-14 going into the fourth quarter. Dallas 46 passes, 31 runs, and they had their 31 run. The 31 runs was 159 games. Pollard had a big time game with no Ezekiel Elliott. I just don't understand why would you throw the ball 46 times? Okay, when Green Bay clearly is a team that could be run on. Clearly, Green Bay's pass defense is actually his strength, but you can run on Green Bay. So they're playing right into the Packers' hands by throwing the ball that many times. And we've discussed all season long when Robert Sapp with Robert Sapp. You look at Dallas. So let me give you the stat from Dallas. The stat of Dallas is an incredible stat. Coming into that game, Dallas was 195-0 with at least a 14-point lead going to the fourth quarter. I think I want to say going to the fourth quarter, yeah. Going to the fourth quarter, yeah. So you know why that is, okay? Why that is? Emmitt Smith, Tony Dorsett, Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer on the offensive line, great offensive lines. That's why that is. They know over the course of their history, when they've been good or at championship level, they could salt away a game with their running attack. I watched it growing up. Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and the offensive line, Jimmy Johnson. When Dallas was up, Emmitt was going to get the rock almost on just about every down. Like it was the game. Dallas had a lead. The game was over. The offensive line was just going to lean on you. You were going to wilt, and that was it. It was lights out. Dak Prescott, very good player. He's not that guy. Like he's not a guy. He's not that guy who you say, Dak, we're gonna put the ball in your hands, go out there and win us the game. Win us the game. No. He can put up some gaudy numbers for fantasy, but and I'm not even talking about the 2 interceptions. One of them probably wasn't his fault, but regardless, I'm not putting Dak Prescott in a position where I want to like run my offense through Dak Prescott and depend on Dak Prescott's right arm for my offense. No. That's like you're just not you're playing right into the defense's hands with that, because you have a great offensive line and you're able to run the ball on almost anybody. And even the second half of that Eagle game, they ran the ball. I didn't think they were going to be able to run the ball at all against the Eagles, but that even with a backup quarterback, they were able to run the ball against a very good a top Eagle defense with a backup quarterback. So that tells you how great their offensive line is. That they have a legit top 5 offensive line. Now it's not what it was when Dak and Ezekiel first got into the league. Martin and Tyrone Smith are older. Okay, but Zach Martin is still a big time player. Smith is not the player he once was, but they still they've done a good job at drafting and developing offensive linemen and getting the right ones. They still have a top offense. They still have a top flight offensive line. And again, every time they throw the ball, to me, they're doing a defensive favor. They really are. So we'll see what Green Bay does with this win. Um, Green Bay has to be kicking themselves losing to Detroit, though. Oh my goodness, that would be like that one. That's the one that if they don't make the playoffs, they'll be saying like, really, we lost to that team. But they keep their season alive. And again, it's very simple. It's simple for both these teams should have the same philosophy. Okay, run the ball, play to your defense. Like both these teams should have the same exact philosophy. For different reasons, but for not because I still think Aaron Rodgers is a better player than Dak Prescott, but he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers. They don't have the weapons to throw to. So, but they both should have the same offensive philosophy and run from that standpoint of playing to their running game and their defense. Games of note: Tennessee, Denver. This game you could have predicted without even watching it. You didn't even have to watch to know what it was going to end up. It's going to be a close game. The Denver defense will keep them hanging around, but Tennessee will find a way to win a close game, and that's exactly what happened. 17-10. Denver, like there has to be a divide in that locker room right now. Their defense right now is the number one scoring defense in the league, only giving up like 16 points a game. The problem is their offense is one of the worst scoring offenses in the last 56 years. Through 9 games, they are averaging 14.6 points per game in an offensively dominated era. That is the lowest output of a team through 9 games since 1966. They have been historically bad offensively, historically bad. And again, you want to blame Russell Wilson? Go ahead, knock yourself out. Yes, he has not played well, but I need to see Russell Wilson with a competent coaching staff. And Nathaniel Hackett, we've said this over the course of the season with this podcast. He ain't it. Like, because there's no way with that defense that this team should not make the playoffs. There's no we with that is a Super Bowl defense that they're wasting. A Super Bowl defense. That's how good that defense is. And they keep them in almost every game. Keep them in almost every single game. And there's nothing worse as a fan. I'm not a Denver fan, but as a fan, when your defense is a top defense, but your offense can't get out of his own way, that will drive you nuts. It might like I remember in 2004, Washington, the Commanders. Of course, that wasn't their name at the time. They had a legit top 5 defense, but the offense was horrible, and they went like 6-10 or 7-9. I think they were 6. I think they went 6-10 that year. And they should have been that defense. They should have been probably 11-5 with that defense. So I don't see how Nathaniel Hackett is the coach next year. I just don't see it. Well, like you can't waste Russell Wilson prime years. Like he's still high. I still think he's in his prime, regardless of what his numbers look like. I don't buy the fact that he can't play anymore. I just don't. I need to see him with a competent competent coaching staff, and we'll see where he's at. We'll really see where he's at. Chargers San Francisco. San Francisco dominates the second half and win 22-16. Though I still was impressed by the Chargers, considering all the injuries they have. Their best offensive lineman Slater is out, all pro. They're all no Mike Williams, no Keenan Allen, no Joey Bosa. I think the Chargers will be fine. San Francisco again ran the ball down their throats in the second half. Their defense completely shut. They held Los Angeles to like 50 yards, like maybe 60 yards of offense in the second half. Some ridiculous number. Maybe it's a little more than that, but it wasn't. They barely. I don't think the Chargers cracked 100 yards in the second half. Um, Chargers had this opportunity to kind of put some distance between them and San Francisco in the first half, but were not able to. And San Francisco 49ers did enough offensively to win this game. Of course, again, they listen. We know they have a top defense. We know what type of play caller Kyle Shanahan is. That is a team that I would not, when I repeat, would not want to see in the playoffs. In that wild in the second round in that divisional round. If I'm one of those top two seeds, I wants no part of San Francisco in that divisional round. If I'm Philadelphia or Minnesota, or even if it's like the Giants, no, I mean zero parts of that team, because that team can maul you to death physically. They have a running game that will travel. We know they have a defense that will travel. Um, that's a scary team. They are a very scary team, to say the least. Now Jimmy G is still gonna be Jimmy G at times, but I want again. If you're in the NFC, you want no parts of that team in the playoffs. You hope that team does not make the playoffs. And I would say the same thing about the Chargers. If I'm the AFC, I want Justin Herbert is spectacular. We know what Keenan Allen and Mike Williams can do. I want no parts of that team, because they could put a number of points on you in a heartbeat. And again, when they get Joey Bosa back, you put him alongside Khalil Mack. That defense, and that defense becomes scary with that front seven. Derwin James is a beast. Um, they I want no parts of that team in the AFC, none. If I was a team up top, I would be rooting for them not to make the playoffs, to be perfectly honest with you. Similar to San Francisco. We'll change gears a bit. Um, of course, Nas came out with King's Disease 3 last Friday. Uh, every review, and I normally don't read reviews, but I was just curious in regards to with the Nas, how people would receive this album. Every review has been great, like as far as people love the album for the most part. The critics, Hip Hop DX, love the album. Um, Nas is on a historic run right now as far as, forget about late in his career. I'm just talking about in any part of any rapper's career. This is one of the great runs. This might be the best run that we've ever seen. You're talking the three KD albums along with Magic. That's three undeniable classic albums. Magic is not a classic, but I mean, a lot of people, I know people that like Magic better than KD too, which I think is crazy, but Magic was a great album as well. Um, uh, Only Kendrick or Kanye, I feel like, can match this run that Nas is on. The first three Kanye albums, I think, were classics, and I believe Kendrick's probably first four were classics. To be honest with you, minimum three, like Damn, Pimp a Butterfly, and Good Kid, Mad City are undeniable classics. Some might argue Section 80 and his last album not being classic. I don't think his last album was a classic, even though it's in the conversation for album of the year. But Kendrick's had at least probably four. But that's a very short list. Like whatever artists. I mean, Jay Z had never had back to back classic albums. Even Biggie had two back to back classics. Before his tragic murder. But this is rarefied air that Nas is that like this is I mean, I posted something about it the other day on Facebook, and somebody, and I said what I'm telling you, that no rapper, we haven't seen this out of a rapper, and somebody said somebody had to go and compare Michael Jackson's run. Like that's how, like, I didn't say in all of music, I just said rap, but that's how that is how incredible that this run is. That someone would have to go and say compare, one of the greatest artists ever, and be like, oh no, he had this run. Um, and the thing about Nas is going to be Nas. Like Nas is grown man music. It's music that's going to be timeless. Is is I think he's entered that rock and roll acting type ordeal where you see, like, put sports aside, right? So sports, right? You get to a certain age, physically, you're not able to do what you professional athletes have to retire. They just eventually they're gonna fall off. Like we want to say that magic number is depending on the sport. Mostly at say after 30, we know LeBron, Tom Brady have pushed that envelope. But in your 30s, is what chances are you're going to be done. Well, in life, like you as a human being, you hit 40s, 50s, you mentally should be like constantly evolving. You should be at a place where if you're an artist, you see actors, you see people in rock and roll. You see these rock and roll legendary rock and roll groups last, or the Rolling Stones are still out there selling out concerts. You know what I'm saying? So it's like as an artist, that prime can go into in your 60s if you lived long enough, even into in your 70s. I mean, you have artists out here like Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder. Those guys are still going. So I think Nas has entered that realm to where this doesn't stop until he wants it to stop. Until like if he has the passion to still make music, this is not going to stop anytime soon. And he doesn't even have to release every year. To be honest with you, like it's not like he has to release every year, but he's at a point where like clearly he, you know, he's always going to be able to tell. Like he's always going to be the best storyteller. That like his storytelling is second to none. But again, his perspective on life, talking about twice a man, twice a child, once a man, like shit like that. Or 30 summers, I almost been here for 30 summers, which is incredible when you think about it. He's had a 28-year career. Like Nas came out in 1994. I think this was his 15th album. The body of work, if you look at Nas's total body of work, it is undeniable. Like there's no equal to it. His total body of work. Now, I think like their albums. There's only one Nas album that I could say I really didn't care for, and that was Nostradamus. But that wasn't a bad album. That's just I think probably the worst Nas album. But that wasn't a bad album. Like to have 15 albums, and I think the definition of just pure of just genius and just an artist, a master at their craft. When you start listening to other stuff that they came out with, like today, I was listening to "Life Is Good" because I heard somebody say, "Well, damn, that Life Is Good." They were mentioning about top 5 Nas albums and trying to rank them and so on and so on. And they talked about how underrated "Life Is Good." And let me check it out. I hadn't heard "Life Is Good" in a few years, and I'm like, damn, this is incredible. I was reminded. So he right now, again, this does not stop until he wants it to stop. And again, this and you know to his credit, him signing, hooking up with Hit Boy has like is a game changer. It's a game changer in the history of hip hop. Like we're gonna look at this act of his career. This kind of like I would say this is probably the third act of Nas's career. Like I say, like he's had, I would say, Illmatic to. I'm trying to say Illmatic to Nostradamus was the first act. Then you had Stillmatic to Life Is Good was the second act, and now in the third act, I would say uh Nasir through up until this point. Or matter of fact, you can even say this is the fourth act. You can say Nas hit the album he did with Kanye was his own separate entity, and now this is the fourth act of his career. So KD3 up until this point, these last 4 albums are kind of his own entity. So listen, whatever act that you picked out, he's been consistent. Like he's been consistently great, like throughout this entire time. There's been, you know, to me, there's been no fall off whatsoever. I mean, I know people want to try to come at him before Stillmatic came out when Jay-Z and all that, but I mean, like let's be honest. Like I Am was a great album. Nostradamus was suspect. Was a suspect album. Wasn't great, but there still was no like. It wasn't. His mom was sick at that time. His mom was sick, doing stuff like that. So he was down from that standpoint. But then he bounced back. He goes Stillmatic. He goes Stillmatic, Godson, Street Disciple, back to back, basically back to back to back, and kind of put that to rest that there was any type fall off. But again, this run right here, like you're talking KD to KD, these three KD, the three KD threes and Magic. It is again, this is rarefied air right here. Like I said, this is only Kendrick and Kanye have had runs that were consecutive, classic, and just not great albums. Consecutive. That's the key word, consecutive. And I looked at it, no, like Jay-Z, Tupac, whoever you want to throw in, Eminem, none of those artists had consecutive albums, a run like this with consecutive albums. Nobody. And don't even put Drake's name in there, please. Just stop it. Stock up for the NFL. Minnesota Vikings are 8-1. They are clearly the class of the NFC South. That was a big time win, one of the most impressive wins of the season. They have to be considered stock up, and they definitely should be feeling good about themselves as a Super Bowl contender. I don't feel good about them as Super Bowl contender, but if you play for the team or you're part of that organization, you definitely feel like you can go to and possibly win a Super Bowl. Stock down, Buffalo Bills. I mean, they've lost two straight games. They haven't looked. They have played basically what? How many good quarters in the last three games? The first half of the Green Bay game, maybe one quarter in the Jets game. So maybe 5 quarters. They played probably maybe 4 to 5 quarters in the last three games. Um, they are trending. They are trending down. Josh Allen has had issues in the with these red zone interceptions. Their offense has been horrific in the second half. I mentioned earlier, only 12 points in the last three games in the second half in the second halves of these games. And again, they look like a team that you want to say peaked too early, or you want to say handling the pressure of being a Super Bowl, of being a favorite. I don't know, but they're headed in the wrong direction. So their stock is definitely down. But guess what? They are 6-3, and there are still 8 games left. So they do have enough time to right the ship and get back to the status of being a top Super Bowl caliber team. Who won the week? The culture. I mean, you had a weekend, right? From Thursday, uh, from Thursday on, you had you had Black Panther 2 come out. You had Nas album drop, and you had Chappelle on Saturday Night Live. So the culture won big this week. That's all it is to it. Now again, everybody, you know, everybody. There was some criticism, of course, with the Chappelle on Saturday Night Live. I don't believe anything that was said that was anti-Semitic. To be honest with you, I think Chappelle is just a genius, and he broke it down. I thought perfectly, like how he broke it down with Kanye and Kyrie Irving. And remember this about Chappelle. He's been in the game for a long time. This guy, remember, he was doing comedy clubs at the age of like 15. So he says he has 35 years of plus of experience. He's seen a lot in this game. So he knows he can speak from experience that very few have when it comes to the business. And he's seen this guy. This is a guy that walked away from $50 million. Okay, so you want to question his? You can listen. You can disagree with his content, his opinions on what have you, all to the cows come home. But I don't really think that you can really knock somebody's character who walked away from $50 million. It's really hard from that standpoint and say that this guy. And remember about the thing about Chappelle. Chappelle lives in what, Yellow Springs, Ohio. He's not one of these Hollywood. He's not out here doing the Hollywood thing and out there doing with the. He seems to me to be as real as they come. And there's no comedian, very few artists that bring people together like Chappelle, and what he's done for comedy. So I think with Chappelle, you have to be fair in terms of explaining the entire package before you know try to rip him in regards to some of the things that he does say. And yet the thing about Chappelle is you have to look at what his overall point is and not just focus on uh talking points, or you'll just miss what he's saying completely. So the culture, to me, won the week. Biggest disappointment, yeah, the Buffalo Bills. I mean, like you you know, at one point were the best team in the league. You've now, even with a top quarterback, even with a number one, coming into that game, a number one defense, um, lost two straight games. They look like a team, like I said, they are a team going in the wrong direction. And again, I can't figure out why their offense is struggling the way it is in the second half. Again, I would love to just like you can give me obvious things. Hey, they struggle in the red zone. Yes, they struggle in the red zone. Why? Why are you struggling in the red zone when you have one of the best running quarterbacks in the league and it's still a decent offensive line? They don't have a mediocre offensive line. Like their offensive line to me is much better than when it was last year. It really is. Like when they want to run the ball, they're able to run the football. So I don't understand why they've struggled. This why they've played this poorly in the second half of these games. But again, if this keeps up, to Robert Sapp's point, they will be a one and done team because the AFC is loaded. The AFC, even with the AFC West not being what we thought it was going to be, you still have you have Kansas City, you still have Cincinnati team that can get hot. You still have a Charger team that nobody wants to see. You still have you had the Dolphins is our team that could maybe win it all. Who knows? So the AFC is still loaded despite the fact that and listen, and people are going to hate this. The Deshaun Watson factor is still out there for whoever Cleveland plays. I don't think Cleveland's going to make the playoffs, but you put him on the team. You like putting him having to deal with him and some of the weapons they have offensively with their ability to run the ball. They're gonna knock some team out the playoffs. I'm trying to tell you right now. They're going to impact the playoff picture in some shape, way, or form. Either knocking a team out the playoffs or costing somebody like Baltimore or Cincinnati a division. Like that team is too talented, and you put a competent quarterback with that offensive line and some of the players they had in that running game, they're going to be in the mix as far as just causing havoc. And so the AFC is loaded. And if you're Buffalo, again, you like the worst thing you could be is playing the type of football they're playing right now. But again, they still have time to right the ship, but they are definitely considering the expectations and considering the Jet loss last week. Definitely to me were the biggest disappointment. Week 10, big game, good game tomorrow. I mean, we'll see if Green Bay can continue, can win a second straight game, and kind of is there going to be a carryover effect from that game, from the Dallas game? Tennessee, we know, will run the ball. You can run the ball on Green Bay, so can Tannehill make enough plays? Um, can Green Bay keep Aaron Rodgers upright? Tennessee has a very good defense. That defense is legit top 10. The legit top 10 defense. I think they're eighth in scoring defense. They have guys like we saw what they did to Kansas City's offense. So if they can do that to Kansas City's offense, we know that they will be able to somewhat handle Green Bay's offense. I kind of like Green Bay because I don't like teams having to travel on Thursday on these short weeks. Kind of, I think it's a major advantage for the home team playing on a short week. And Green Bay is still a desperate football team. But I think I think Green Bay wins a close game, but certainly you're not surprised at shocked or surprised if Tennessee does come out with the win. Dallas and Minnesota. Now I could be mistaken, but the last time I checked, Dallas was favored in this game and at Minnesota, which I don't quite understand. I'm gonna check again because I don't like that's like what like huh? Like how is Dallas favored at Minnesota? I don't get it. They again, these are teams. I don't like Dallas's approach at all. They still make dumb mistakes. They still, to me, I don't like how Dak, like, Dak had a bad game. I know he was coming off two very good games. I I just don't think Dallas just plays to his strengths enough. Um, and I think that they will make enough mistakes, to be honest with you, that Minnesota will find a way to win this game. Minnesota has been great in these close games over the course of the season. And I think they're undefeated. They're undefeated in one score games as in comparison to last season. Yeah, Dallas is a 1 point is a point and a half favorite. I don't get that. I honestly don't get that. And like, yeah, I think Minnesota should be a field goal. It should be a 3 point favorite. I mean, it is a borderline pick'em game. I'll give you that. But to me, yeah, Dallas like this. They're not like Dallas hasn't earned that type of they're not that type of team that they should be favored against an 8-1 team on the road. Like no. Kansas City and the Chargers. Looking forward to this game. Chargers played well the first time they played Kansas City. Almost should have beat Kansas City. Now the Chargers could be getting back two of these receivers. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are both listed as questionable. Um, so they could be getting healthy at the right time. Bosa is not coming back. Bosa and Slater probably won't be back until like week 13 at the earliest. So, but the Chargers could be probably get back Mike Williams and maybe Keenan Allen. Um, if the Chargers want any chance of winning the division, they have to win this game. Right now, they are 5-4 right now. Um, they're 5-4 right now. Kansas City is 7-2 with a win over the Chargers earlier. So if Kansas City wins this game, that division for all intents purposes it'll be a wrap for that division if Kansas City wins this game. Um, so that is your Week 10 preview. Uh, it was a great week last week in the NFL. Some great football. Uh, we are in the stretch of the season where we're going to start to see a lot of divisional games. The AFC, most of the division, like so, AFC East is still up for grabs. The NFC West is still up for grabs. Despite Philly's loss, I still think that they are in total control of that division. They still are up 3 games. Um, 3 games, in essence, 3 games because they beat Philadelphia earlier. The North, again, AFC North is up for grabs between Baltimore and Cincinnati. I think the West is probably over. Like I think I don't see Kansas City losing that division, but most of them, and of course we know the AFC North is long gone. But most of the divisions, the majority of the divisions there's still a number of these division races that are still up for grabs. Tampa, keep your eye on Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay had a excellent win against Seattle. Their defense has played well basically the entire season, minus the Kansas City game. Brady starting to play better. They went back to kind of like a 3 yards in the cloud dust offense they ran the ball a lot against Seattle, so they kind of took some pressure off Brady. Brady had thrown just too many passes, to be honest with you. So watch out for Tampa Bay. They're starting to kind of round in the form with a couple wins in a row. Um, Couple thoughts before I let you go. Tua stays hot. He's playing at a MVP level. He should be in the MVP conversation. He right now has the fourth best odds behind Mahomes, Allen, and Jalen Hurts. He has played spectacular since since after the Pittsburgh game. After Pittsburgh game, we know he was shaky, but the last 3 games he has 3 touchdowns. He has like 9 touchdowns and no interceptions, completing like 76% of his passes. Um, and right now is the number one ranked quarterback in the league right now, and in terms of rating and also QBR. Those are the two main metrics they look at when they're ranking quarterbacks. So he's been unbelievable. And think about this, right? This is how wild the NFL can be. A month ago, 3 weeks ago, or a month ago, we were talking like maybe this guy's career is over. Do you remember? I mean, think about it. I said on this podcast, I don't think he should play for the rest of the year at worst, minimum for the rest of the year. I did not think he would play. Yeah, we're talking about lawsuits and stuff, all this, that story has basically gone dissipated with his play. Like that has become a non-story fast the way he's played. I mean, he has 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Um he is right there for MVP. I think Mahomes probably will get it. But I think Tua is gonna be right there. Tua is gonna be right there for MVP. Like if Miami goes like 12-5, or I don't think they'll go 13-4. If Miami's like in that 12-5, 11-6, 12-5 range, and let's say he's like 30, if he's like 35 touchdowns, 4 5 interceptions, something like that. I mean, it's not out of the realms of possibility that he wins the MVP. It's right. He'll be right there. Great win for Washington. They completely outplayed Philadelphia. At one point, they had the ball for like 30 minutes. Philadelphia had it for like 7. They ran the ball like 47 times in that game. The game plan was flawless. We're gonna run the ball, converted on third down, kept Jalen Hurts off the field, and turned Philadelphia over. They did everything they needed to do to negate the fact that there's a major talent differential between those two teams, despite the fact Philadelphia still had a chance with the last, at the end. But they got, Philadelphia gets the dumb penalty, and Washington, in essence, they were basically able to run the clock out before, that last meaningless touchdown they got to make it 32-21. One of probably the best game that they've played in maybe the Ron Rivera era. Now, you could say the Tampa game. There are two games that stand out. Pittsburgh game during the pandemic when Pittsburgh was undefeated a couple years ago. That game was at Pittsburgh with no fans, and Tampa Bay game in Washington last year. So those are probably that somewhere wherever order you want to put it in. Those are the 3 best performances Washington has had in the Ron Rivera era. Washington improves to 5-5. They are still well in the playoff hunt. So we'll see what happens. Listen. I don't want to see Carson Wentz back on the field. He's going to eventually come back. But listen, I'm not sitting up here making Taylor Heineke out to be, Nick Foles from 2017. But that team plays with way more energy with Taylor Heineke, and there's a belief in Taylor Heineke that was not there with Carson Wentz. That's just that is not even a question. So Rivera's gonna have an interesting decision on his hands. Again, no one should there is not set in stone that you have to bring back Carson Wentz like that. I don't see how Carson Wentz has not earned that type of cachet over the last 3 or 4 years with the way he's played, to where he should be that should be his job. No, I just so he's eventually going to come back. We'll see what happens, but I don't see as a fan of the team, I don't want to see Carson Wentz on the field, near the field. That's just my opinion from that standpoint. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast. I will see you next time. Again, we have a lot of stuff out right now. We're going to have this out. Of course, we still have the Love Jones 25 podcast. Have a lot of fun doing that with Tiffany Queen Quinn. So check that out. I will see you next time. Have a great, great rest of your evening. So long.